There's a version of you that no one has ever seen. Not your friends, not your family, not the person who got close enough to think they understood you. Because the moment anyone started to see that version, something inside you would tighten. A wall would go up. A door would close. And you would find yourself doing what you always do. Disappearing into silence, into distance, into the safety of being alone before anyone could confirm what you already believed about yourself. That version of you, the one that exists in the quiet when no one is watching, is the most honest version of you that exists. And it's the one you've spent your whole life hiding. Maybe you're alone right now. Maybe it's late and the apartment is silent, and you're lying there in the dark with your thoughts circling like sharks. And something in you is tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that comes from holding yourself together so tightly that you've forgotten what it feels like to simply exist without armor. You check your phone. No messages. You put it down. You pick it back up. You put it down again. And in that moment, in that small, ordinary moment, something happens inside you that you would never, ever admit to anyone. You feel everything. Every suppressed feeling from every conversation you walked away from. Every urge to reach out that you turned into silence. Every time you wanted to say, "I'm scared," or "I need you," or "I'm not okay," and chose instead to disappear into the only place that felt safe enough to breathe. You know what I'm about to tell you is true. You feel it in your body right now, don't you? That tightness in your chest, that heaviness behind your eyes, that sensation that something inside you is screaming while the outside of you stays perfectly, utterly still. Because here's the brutal truth that you've been avoiding just as carefully as you've been avoiding connection. You are not emotionally unavailable. You are emotionally overwhelmed. And there is a difference that changes everything. When you were a child, your nervous system learned something very specific. It learned that your needs, your very real, very valid needs for attention, for comfort, for responsiveness, were too much. Not because you were actually too much, but because the environment you were in couldn't meet you there, couldn't handle your emotions, couldn't tolerate your vulnerability. So your brain did what brains do. It adapted. It rewired. It built a system designed to protect you from ever feeling that rejection again. Your amygdala, that ancient, powerful part of your brain that scans for threat, became hypervigilant. It learned to detect the earliest signs of emotional demand. The moment someone wanted something from you, the moment intimacy started to feel like a trap, the moment connection started to feel like it would cost you your safety. And it would trigger. Cortisol would flood your system, your heart rate would spike, and your solution, your brilliant, survival-driven solution, was to shut down, to detach, to pull away before anyone could see you unravel. This wasn't a choice, it was a neurological adaptation born from necessity. Your nervous system learned that emotional closeness was dangerous, and so it built walls to keep you safe. But here is what you've never been told, what you've never allowed yourself to feel. Those walls didn't just keep people out. They locked you in. And the one thing you do when no one is watching, the thing that happens in the silence, in the dark, when the armor comes off and you're alone with yourself, is that you grieve. Not openly, not visibly. You don't sob or scream or fall apart the way people imagine grief looks. You're too controlled for that, too defended.
But there is a grief happening inside you right now that is so deep, so old, so unfelt, that it has become the background radiation of your entire existence. You grieve for the version of yourself that never got to need things, that never got to be soft, that learned so young to be strong that you forgot there was another way to survive. You grieve for every connection you walked away from, not because you didn't feel anything, but because you felt too much and had nowhere to put it. You grieve for every time you wanted to stay and couldn't. Every time you wanted to reach out and didn't. Every time you saw someone reaching for you and chose the safety of silence over the terror of being truly seen. And in that grief, in that private, invisible, devastating grief, there is something else happening. You are remembering yourself. The self you were before you learned to hide. The self that existed before protection became your entire identity. The self that still, after all these years, lives somewhere underneath all the armor you built to survive. That self is not gone. That self is just waiting. Waiting for the moment when you'll finally stop running long enough to feel what you've been running from. I want you to picture something. It's late at night. You're alone. And you reach for your phone to text someone. Maybe it's someone you pushed away. Maybe it's someone you've been thinking about. Maybe it's someone you've been pretending not to miss. Your hand hovers over the screen. You type something. You delete it. You type it again. You delete it again.
And in that moment, something inside you splits in two. One part of you is screaming, reach out, connect, let someone in. You want this. You need this. You are so lonely and so tired of being alone with yourself. But the other part, the part that has been running the show since you were a child, is screaming louder. Don't. You'll be disappointed. They'll let you down. You'll feel too much, and they won't know what to do with you, and you'll be abandoned again. And it's not worth it. It's easier to stay here. It's safer to stay alone. And the louder part wins. Every time. You put the phone down, you turn over, you close your eyes, and you make a choice that no one will ever see, that you will never tell anyone about, that will define the entire trajectory of your life. You choose silence. Not because you don't care, but because caring has always felt like a trap. Because the last time you let yourself care this much, it destroyed you. Because your nervous system has convinced you, with perfect, terrifying logic, that the only way to survive is to never let anything matter that much. But here is what that logic doesn't account for. The thing you're protecting yourself from is the thing you need most. Now I want to show you something that you've never allowed yourself to see. The person you pushed away, the one you stopped calling, the one whose texts you left unread, the one you told yourself you didn't care about anymore. That person is not moved on. That person is sitting somewhere right now, maybe late at night, maybe lying in the dark like you, and they are trying to understand what happened. They are replaying conversations. They are wondering what they did wrong. They are blaming themselves for something they never caused. And if they could see you, the real you, the one that exists in the silence, the one that grieves in private, the one that reaches and deletes and reaches and deletes, they would not see a person who doesn't care. They would see a person who cares so deeply that it terrifies them. They would see someone worth waiting for. But here's the problem. You'll never let them see that version of you. Because the armor doesn't just go up in the moments when you're with them, it goes up in the moments when you're alone with yourself. It goes up every time you feel something too big and you have no one to hold space for it. It goes up because you've never learned that it's safe to be fully, completely, catastrophically emotional. And so the pattern continues. The avoidance deepens. The silence becomes your identity. Until one day, you look around and realize that everyone who ever tried to love you has stopped trying. And you tell yourself that's what you wanted. You tell yourself you never needed them anyway. You tell yourself you're stronger this way. But in the dark, in the quiet, in the place where no one is watching, you feel the lie of that story. You know the truth. You're not stronger. You're smaller. You've made yourself so safe that you've made yourself invisible. You've protected yourself from all the pain of rejection, but also from all the possibility of being truly known. And somewhere inside you, in that private grief I've been talking about, there is a question you've never been brave enough to ask. What if the armor is the problem? Here is the shift I'm asking you to make. I want you to stop thinking of your avoidant patterns as protection and start thinking of them as a prison you've built for yourself. Because protection implies that there is a self worth protecting. But you've been protecting so hard for so long that you've forgotten there was ever anything on the other side of the wall. The thing you do when no one is watching, that private grief, that private unraveling, that private feeling of everything you've suppressed, I want you to stop doing it alone. Not by reaching out to the person you pushed away, not by forcing yourself to be vulnerable before you're ready, but by starting, in this moment, to acknowledge what you've been carrying. You've been carrying a lifetime of feelings you never got to express. You've been carrying a need for connection that you've been taught to be ashamed of. You've been carrying the grief of a child who never learned that their emotions were safe to feel. That grief has been waiting for you, not to destroy you, but to finally be witnessed. By you. The one person who has been looking anywhere but in that direction. Here is what I want you to understand, and understand deeply in the place where the truth lives. Your avoidance is not a personality trait. It is not a fixed, immutable part of who you are. It is a survival strategy that made perfect sense when you developed it and has outlived its usefulness by decades. The same nervous system that learned to shut down in the presence of emotional demand can learn, with time, with safety, with the right kind of exposure, to tolerate what it once found intolerable. But the first step is not external. It doesn't start with reaching out to someone or forcing yourself to be present in connection. It starts with the moment no one is watching. It starts with you, alone, finally allowing yourself to feel what you've been running from. The grief, the loneliness, the fear, the longing. All of it. Feel it. Not to fix it, not to solve it, just to feel it. To stop running from the inside of yourself. To stop treating your own emotional life as the enemy you have to contain. Because here's what happens when you do this. When you finally let yourself feel what you've been suppressing, the feelings don't destroy you. They release you. And in that release, something shifts. The grip loosens. The armor becomes less necessary. The door you keep bolted from the inside starts to feel like it might be safe to open. Not because the world is suddenly safer, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. I want to warn you about something. This work, this internal, invisible, unglamorous work of feeling what you've been avoiding, is not easy. And in the beginning, it will feel like you're making things worse. Like you're opening a wound you've kept carefully closed. Like you're risking the stability you've built your entire identity around. People in your life may not understand what you're doing. They may not see the change because the change is happening inside, in the silence, in the moments when no one is watching. But that doesn't mean it's not real. That doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Every time you choose to feel instead of suppress, you are rewiring something. You are proving to your nervous system that it is possible to survive the wave of emotion without drowning. You are teaching your amygdala that emotional intimacy is not a threat. You are building, one feeling at a time, a version of yourself that can exist in connection without disappearing. And at some point, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not this year, the person on the other end of that silence will notice. They will notice that something in you has shifted, that you're not running as fast, that the walls are lower, that when they reach for you, you don't reflexively pull away. And they won't understand what happened. They won't know about the nights you spent alone, feeling the grief you'd been avoiding for years. They won't know about the work you did in the silence when no one was watching. But you will know. And that knowledge will become your power. Because here is what I'm going to tell you now, at the end, and I want you to hear it in the place where the truth lives. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not fundamentally flawed in a way that makes real connection impossible. You are a person who learned to survive in an environment that didn't have room for your emotional truth. And you survived. Brilliantly. Completely. You built a system so sophisticated that it kept you safe for decades. But you are not that child anymore. And the environment you're in now, this life you're living, this version of yourself you've become, has room for more than you were ever allowed to feel. The silence you're in right now is not a punishment. It is a doorway. The grief you're carrying is not a burden. It is a gift you've never opened. And the one thing you've been doing wrong, the one thing that has kept you stuck in this pattern your entire life, is not reaching out too fast or caring too much. It is refusing, in the moments when no one is watching, to be the one who finally witnesses yourself, to hold your own grief, to feel your own fear, to know your own longing, and not look away from it. That is the work. That is the shift. That is the beginning of everything changing. Not because the world changes, not because other people change, because you stop running from the inside of yourself. And in that stillness, in that surrender, in that one radical act of choosing to feel instead of flee, you find the version of yourself that was waiting. The one who was never too much. The one who was only ever, finally, enough.